Good afternoon to everyone who are here and who watch us online. So the next topic is Ukraine needs a law on the protection of whistleblowers. Our guests are Yegor Sobolev, MPA, Samopomich faction, Oleksandr Kalitenko, expert of policy analysis, Transparency International Ukraine, and Evgeniya Motorevska, investigative journalist of the Slidstvo.Info project, and Larysa, Golnyk, judge of the Oktyabrsky district court of Poltava. The last event shows that people need protection of those who provide important information to society. One ugly story happened to investigative journalists, and you know that Prosecutor General Yuri Lutsenko tried to see what was the information in their phones under the pretext of the case against the other official, and it happened not in, he did it in 17 months after the investigation. And Natalka Sedleska, one of the journalists, she was the author of an investigation about Seychelles trip of Lutsenko and Petro Poroshenko trip to Maldives. And it shows the real goals. Another story, ugly story that happened in Poltava, you know that Larysa Golnyk, this judge became an example for the whole judiciary, and many people in the world knew about the story. She told that the head of the court, he asked her to take decision in the interest of the mayor in the city where she works. Instead of punishing those who tried to commit this crime, they persecute Larysa, and the last decision, I cannot say that he is our colleague, but he is the person who is the judge, and it says it shows that some corrupt people wanted to get a wrongful decision, and we need a special law to protect whistleblowers, and this law is developed and registered in the parliament, and our committee approved this draft law, and we recognize it as such that correspond to the anti-corruption legislation, and we recommended to adopt it in the first reading, and no one else supported this initiative. And now this is important, that people should understand that this is about their life, and people just rob us, and such whistleblowers can tell us about these people, and these people should have protection. They should not be afraid to fight for the truth. And the draft law that we want to provide, it is envisaged that 10% of the sum that was saved, that was protected, will go to the whistleblower in order to disclose corruption, in order that this would be beneficial. And we hope that with the support of the public, we will adopt this law as previous important laws on anti-corruption code, for example. I would like to give the floor to my colleagues. Thank you, Yegor. I'm Oleksandr, and I represent Transparency International Ukraine, the representative office of this organization. And a year ago, we provided recommendations on prevention of corruption, and we provided these recommendations to the state bodies, and in 1 year, we tried to get information how these recommendations are implemented, and how these bodies get information from whistleblowers, and we found out that those lines that were created locally and at the national level, they are not protected, and the reports of whistleblowers that are carried out through these lines, sometimes people are absent at their workplace, those who work with these notices, and these messages may only be sent during the working day. But if something happened on weekends, for example, you should wait for Monday, and sometimes on sites you can not you cannot find information quickly, where to address to the phone numbers, the emails, and it's difficult to find the right number when you phone. And you may get the answer that this number is wrong, and they will give you the right number, or a person will answer that does not have such a responsibility, and in this case, you would explain the situation, or it may be. It can happen that the line is busy and someone do not respond to your systemic calls, and sometimes there are no such channels of communication, or there's some referral to the government portal or to police number, for example, call police, and we won't take your message, your whistleblower message. So it shows the attitude of the state to whistleblowers, to the citizens who help to fight corruption, and these cold lines, unfortunately, not hotlines. This is the bright example of this, and now we may face the situation. We may be a nice country with good practices of whistleblower protection, like in Korea, or we will go back to the level of India. 5 or 10 years ago, the whistleblowers were tortured and even killed. They were beaten and they were physically assaulted. And this draft law 4038A, it provides the channels for whistleblowers, and what is also important, official bodies should create these channels and internal procedures, and they should study this information that is provided by whistleblowers. So first, how to get the information, and then how to process this information. And we saw the initiative about the law on foreign agents. We had this idea in 2014, and maybe the next step, if carried out by this logic, will be the introduction of electronic register for whistleblowers, so he should submit before disclose his information. So this was not removed, and Ukraine provide not only good examples like Prozoro, but also bad examples, because our Vietnamese colleagues from Transparency International Vietnam, they said that their government also wants to introduce this e-declarations for activists, and they use it as a positive example of Ukraine. So Ukraine should break this trend and to adopt positive law on whistleblowers' rights protection, because we as Transparency International Ukraine see that now it is really dangerous to fight against corruption, especially in the regions where the whistleblowers are really vulnerable, and those activists who threaten this corrupt system, their life and property is under threat. Because unfortunately last year there was a persecution of those people who fight against, who disclose corruption, and people connect to this with their professional activity, and these attacks are unacceptable. And this law on whistleblowers protection, this law can change this trend. Thank you. Thank you, Evgeniya Motorevska, investigative journalist of the Slidstvo.Info project. And here we have Yegor Sobolev, and I would like to say that 1/3 of the materials from they are grounded on whistleblower information. When we are speaking about military sector or Ukrainian prisons, It is difficult for journalists to find information, and there are people who, despite risks, are ready to disclose information and bring it to the public. I would like to say that the situation with whistleblowers, with those who work with journalists, the situation is critical. So this is self-sacrifice. If a person from the system is brave enough and makes the step, they should say goodbye to their to their position and to change the sphere of activity. And I cooperated with whistleblowers. I have big experience in this. First, there is public resonance, but then several months or half year pass, and these people, they are forced to leave. And the Natalia Kosidlitska case, it shows that power will always try to control journalists and their sources of information. And today I've read the news that in Czech Republic they had such a scandal, and they are more promoted democracy than we are. And the journalist who provided materials about corruption in military sphere, he had problems, and the Supreme Court tried to protect him. And even if Ukraine becomes more developed, the power will try to control the public, and that's why we are speaking about the law on whistleblowers protection. And the United States are really ideal in this. They adopted the laws a long time ago in 1970s after Watergate scandal and the leak of information and the documents of Pentagon in the United States. They provide protection to whistleblowers and criminal prosecutions for the pressure on the whistleblowers. So these are tougher sanctions than just pressure on the layman. So when in Ukraine there is competition and fighting corruption, and we see the war between NABU and the SEP, and this law is really important now. I'm a judge of Oktyabrsky District Court of Poltava, and now I'm out of work. And 4 years ago, I became the whistleblower. Some people tried to bribe me in the interest of city mayor Mamai in order that I adopted decision in his interests. And the last years showed that the state tolerates corruption, and the judges, law enforcers, judges, investigators, and other officials, they do not understand the whistleblowers. They associate themselves with corrupt people and not with whistleblowers. And in this case, we see that when you try to provide this information, it is really terrible when they persecute you for the adherence to law and implementation of your responsibilities. There was moral and psychological pressure. This is one side. And I was attacked, and I believe this was in connection with my case. Well, being a judge, a lawyer, having proper protection from the state, it's not easy to discharge me as any other employee, but the body that should take care of independence, the High Council of Justice, brought me to responsibility, and it shows that the state, through its bodies, try to show that they want that whistleblowers they want to punish them for the activity and to show by their example to others in order that others didn't disclose this important information that should be provided to the public. Several days ago, on the 24th of September, there was a decision in the case concerning a person who was the intermediary between me as a judge and the city mayor, who, in the interests of my city mayor, tried to bribe me, and he got positive decision, and the judge believed that the judge provided such a decision, and he doubted my evidence, and he said that I violated the code of judge, these decisions show the toleration of corruption by the state, and it is really necessary to adopt the draft law on the protection of whistleblowers. When I got information about this draft law, I understood that without protection of whistleblowers, it is impossible to move forward, because if there are no such people who disclose corruption and other crimes, how the cases will go to court in such a case. So these people, they bear this burden of proving the guilt. And if these people see that they are protected, and I would like to say that except this moral pressure on the whistleblowers, also there are criminal and civil persecutions. They go to courts often, and some disciplinary persecutions are also carried out, and it can lead even to physical harm and some harm to their health. That's why I support this draft law, and I call on everyone to pay attention to this draft law. Otherwise, we will go back in other direction, not in the direction we should move. So one question to Yegor Sobolev. So 5 key things about this draft law. What does it envisage? It protects a person from being discharged. Second, as I said, it envisages remuneration for the provision of information and made this thing. So if someone disclose corruption or some other crime, he really helps millions of people. And in Ukrainian history and in the history of the world, such people, they should be valued, and they should be remunerated, and we should connect it with some benefit. It should be not fighting corruption should be not only safe but also pleasant. So there will be less corruption, less those people who violate something. So it was said before, there should be some channels, protected channels created for the transfer of this information. Those people who work in the military sector or in some other important sectors for the protection and the preservation of our state and the companies, they're just afraid to speak about it, because they understand that special services, those people with the special permits, they just protect corruption, and according to the law, there will be opportunity for safe provision of this information in the interest of society. This is the world practice that exists, and in spring I attended the meeting of the working group that prepared such a document for European Commission and for European Parliament, and the whole European Union is preparing to protect the whistleblowers on the whole territory of the EU. And the country that really adopted such law in e-declaring, and we should not lag behind. And there are people who do this, and they do not have any protection, and there are many repressions against them, and we should protect such people. Please, questions? Anna Kalushna, 24th channel. Maybe to Yegor or to Evgeniya. So, as I know, there is a special department who should protect whistleblowers, and we were invited to some excursion, like some bureaucratic bodies provide. So they do not, if they do not protect, why the state should pay money for the support of such institutions? And we asked questions about Larysa, Golnyk, and Sergei Bondarенko, not the whistleblower judge, and they said that they cooperate with them, and do they really work properly? So it doesn't correspond the truth. And our today's speaker, Larysa Golnyk, she addressed the special department of national anti-corruption body, and this was not the only case, because the department who deals with the cooperation with whistleblowers, they prepared a draft law, alternative draft law, how to defend whistleblowers, and there was international standards. They heard about it from international trainers, but these recommendations were not reflected in full in this draft law, and maybe they should rewrite it or to provide some amendments to improve this draft law. And so this is the level of understanding of national anti-corruption body, and the level of implementation and the quality and efficiency. I would like to specify. I addressed the agency, and I didn't get information from national agency for prevention of corruption, and there was a decision to bring the head of my court to responsibility, and I addressed them, and my salary was not paid in full, and also they said that I missed some sessions at the committee, and all these missing days and all these payments, they provided negative characteristic, and they just recorded this information. And even if there are employees who work adequately and respond adequately, and only due to these people who really do their work properly, and the official who dealt with my case, she really cared, and this claim was accepted. Otherwise, I wouldn't have any case. And the head of the Oktyabrsky court was brought to administrative responsibility. But this is not only about bringing the person to this responsibility. They do not say that he violated Article 53 concerning corruption, because this decision does not state his violation, his wrongful actions, and further on, my actions to defend myself. The National Agency for Corruption Prevention, they took this decision and they didn't try to help me to restore my rights. They said, address the court, pay court fees. So I was punished by the money, but I still have to pay court fees and to address the lawyer. Yes, I am a lawyer, but I have so many cases with my participation, and I believe that I am really persecuted as whistleblower. So I believe that the whole legal company should work on these cases. So to find the money, to find some legal help for a whistleblower, the lawyers should be paid. It is not the work of whistleblower to search for this money. Some investor or donor or state money should be spent for whistleblower protection. We, whistleblowers, despite we have a body that really should help us. Hanna Solomatina, she is a whistleblower herself, and she suffers from National Agency for Corruption Prevention. And Hanna Solomatina, she initiates the issue of creation of a civil society organization to unite whistleblowers to help themselves and each other and to support each other financially and legally. And Hanna Solomatina initiated the petition to be signed, and that qualification commission would allow me to be appointed in the Supreme Court. So the question is, do you know what political forces are ready to support this draft law? Who expressed the readiness? In the parliament, words mean little. Only what buttons are pushed. So we discussed many draft laws and about anti-corruption bureau and other cases, but inside there is agreement of corrupt people from Petro Poroshenko bloc to opposition bloc, and they see it as a threat to their interests because they believe that whistleblowers would provide information against them. That's why they do not support this draft law. So the recommendation was provided in 2016, and now this law is not put on for voting, but it corresponds to European tasks, and the European community implements these tasks, and we should go with them together or follow them. We should not block such decisions. Next question, please. Thank you, Nadina Prushliak, Union. So I would like to ask, you said about draft law about agents. Is there a threat in this? And to Larysa, after Mamai's dismissal, what changed for you, or the system continues to fight you? The draft law on foreign agents, it will be developed, and it's difficult to say what threats it will provide. And if we remember the previous draft laws that were directed at civil society, the draft laws that introduce additional tax reporting for the civil society activists, separately to the declarations of activists, we see that those draft laws, they do not correspond to international standards in full, and based on this trend and using this logic, it is difficult to expect something good from the draft law on foreign agents. So I give the floor to Larysa. Recently in Poltava, city deputies dismissed city head from the implementation of his responsibilities. So I do not feel this effect because this case is going further, because these are not only the interests of city head, it's not only the local level, but it all went up, like from epicenter, further and further away. So events now are in Kiev, and the head of the court, in his room, these agreements were happening, but things went along another way. He was brought to administrative responsibility, but they said, look, your image is not so clear, not so bright, and he was forced to do this. And now I appeal against the decision, and I appeal against the decisions and the opinion of the High Council of Justice. And High Council of Justice, it protects this bad practice when people come and agree with judges, and I show how this happening. And I haven't seen a judge who would come and say that they should protect me. Maybe someone say that you are right. No, they do not say even this. Yes, they understand, some of them understand me, but publicly no one protected me from this illegality. Even High Council of Justice and other bodies, they didn't protect me. So civil cases on the protection of me as a person, so this is the cases. So whistleblowers, they go to court to protect their dignity, to protect their rights, and this is money. These are resources. So I have to live by this. So about the draft laws. So do I understand correctly that there are two draft laws? One prepared by the National Agency for Prevention of Corruption, and other draft law. So I know about the two draft laws, and prepared by the National Agency for Prevention of Corruption, and it broadens Article 53 of the law of Ukraine on prevention of corruption. It states that the state should provide protection. And when they say provide legal and other protection, and what is this legal protection, and what is this other protection, and what are the mechanisms, how it should be done? There are no mechanisms. I provided my proposals and sent them to the National Agency for Prevention of Corruption. So what is the term for the protection of whistleblowers? I believe that this should be a long term, because High Council of Justice thought that I was persecuted. I became a whistleblower, and in 9 months I felt problems. And the National Agency for Prevention of Corruption, the official, he saw this relation, and the opinion they provided not to the body that should remove the problems, but the upper authority. And I said, for example, if it is the Cabinet of Ministers who violates the rights of whistleblowers, where are you going to provide the document? If it is a president who violates the rights of the whistleblowers. So they do not have higher authority than them. So the document should be provided to the body that violates the rights. So they believe that High Council of Justice is above the head of the court, than head of the court. So so there is also a need to provide psychological help to the whistleblower. Often this is the case. Do you have other comments? The last question. Leonid Khomyakov, Systemic and Economic Analysis. Natalia Sedletska showed that there are asymmetric means to fight against the enemies of democracy and fair behavior. Maybe you addressed world legal community for help. Thank you. Yes. You know, this is too broad. I communicate with Transparency International, and they support me. They have communication. They support me, understand me. So I got acquainted with the person from Ukrainian diaspora, and they advised to address the embassy. But we should work on our own practices. We live in this country, and we should force the state to implement the laws. It is good that I am a lawyer. It is good that I am a judge. But not all whistleblowers have such a character, because a person can appear in such a situation that they don't have other options. They provide information, and they have terrible moral suffering, because a person understands that he or she did something right, but this person is punished for the right actions, and these can be moral sufferings. And I am convinced, I know that I did right, but I try to use legal ways. We should force the state. We cannot do it differently. So this is the end of press briefing. Thank you.